Iconoclasm, Greek for image breaking, is the deliberate destruction within a culture of the culture's own religious icons and other symbols or monuments. Iconoclasm is generally motivated by an interpretation of the Ten Commandments that declares the making and worshipping of images or icons of holy figures such as Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and saints to be idolatry and therefore blasphemy. The 7th century had been a period of major crisis for the Byzantine Empire, and believers had begun to lean more heavily on divine support. The use of images of the holy increased in Orthodox worship, and these images increasingly came to be regarded as points of access to the divine. One notable change within the Byzantine Empire came in 695, when the government of Justinian II added a full-face image of Christ on the obverse of imperial gold coins. The change caused the Caliph Abd al-Malik to stop his earlier adoption of Byzantine coin types. He started a purely Islamic coinage with lettering only. Nevertheless, there remained a large number of Christians who disapproved of images. They were to be found mainly in the eastern provinces of the empire, where there was a large mixture of Semitic blood. Those Christians were in contact with the other two monotheistic religions, Islam and Judaism, who practiced aniconism. Aniconism is the opposition to the use of icons or visual images to depict living creatures or religious figures. It was the 20 Years' Anarchy, Justinian II, who reigned between 685 and 711, set in motion a chain of events by embarking on a despotic and increasingly violent course. His policies met with considerable opposition, eventually provoking a rebellion led by Laetios in 695, which deposed and exiled him, precipitating a prolonged period of instability and anarchy, with 7 emperors in 22 years. Emperor Justinian II appointed the young Leo to the prestigious rank of Spatharius, the Byzantine word for attendant, as a reward for assisting him in the recovery of his throne in 705, but the emperor soon developed a distrust of him, and therefore sent him to perform a perilous mission among the Alani on the remote eastern frontier. Anticipating that he would never return, despite the danger, Leo accomplished his assignment and managed to preserve his life. Justinian continued to reign for a further 6 years, until he faced a rebellion led by the usurper Philippikos Bardians. Justinian was captured and executed, as was his son and co-emperor Tiberius, thus extinguishing the Heraclean line. Justinian had taken the Byzantine Empire yet further from its origins. He effectively abolished the historical role of consul, merging it with emperor, thus strengthening the emperor's constitutional position as absolute monarch. After a rapid succession of several emperors to the throne, Leo the Isaurian entered Constantinople on the 25th of March 770 and forced the abdication of Theodosios III, becoming emperor as Leo III, putting an end to the 20 Years' Anarchy and later establishing the Isaurian dynasty. Emperor Leo III, the founder of the Isaurian dynasty, was of Syrian origin. His original name was Canaan, and he was born in Germanicia in the Syrian province of Commagene. Leo was fluent in Arabic, possibly as a native language, and was described by monk and chronicler Theophanes as the Saracen-minded. Leo III was a man of remarkable ability, energy and intellect. By emerging victorious by repelling an Arab invasion that almost destroyed the empire, was determined to use his victory to reform and reorganize the empire over which he ruled. He was responsible for the completion of the so-called theme system, by which the provinces of the empire were henceforward administered. He introduced a revised law code, the Ecloga, and issued improved editions of the maritime and agricultural codes. But his main ambition was to carry out ecclesiastical and theological reforms. He was a devout Christian of Syrian origin, coming from Germanicia, modern Marash. The emperor shared the stern dislike of the Semites for anything that might smack of idolatry. The taste of images and holy relics was now widespread throughout Christendom. Many of the early fathers had opposed its growth, as it seemed to them to contravene the Old Testament ban on graven images. But what was the spark that triggered iconoclasm? It was not a who or a group of people, but a what. precursor of the controversy seems to have been the large submarine volcanic eruption in the summer of 726 in the Aegean Sea between the island of Thera in modern Santorini and the Russia, probably causing tsunamis and great loss of life. Many, probably including Leo III, interpreted this as a judgment on the empire by God and decided that the use of images had been the offense. But, first of all, what is a religious icon? An icon could be the face of a saint, an angel, the Virgin Mary, the Christ, painted on wood. These icons were venerated in churches, public places, and private homes. They were often believed to have protective and magical properties. An icon could also be a sacred text or a book. It could also be holy oil or the tomb of a martyr and saint, where people would touch or sleep in order to be healed or receive some divine message. These were called contact relics. It could be the bones of a saint. It could also be something immaterial, as an ecclesiastical hymn. In particular, the citizens of Constantinople held that their city was specially protected by the Mother of God. During the siege of the city in 626, when the Persians hired the Avars to attack the city walls, it was the power of her holy image and the hymn of Ipamachos Stratego that drove them back. Humbler folk in the empire, whose ancestors a few generations back had been giving full worship to the statues of gods, goddesses, demigods and heroes, willingly gave a similar worship to the statues and pictures of Christ and the saints, crediting them too with the power to work miracles. It was the belief that worshippers could contact Christ with the veneration of images that gave birth to the cult of saints, the cult of relics, and the cult of images. In 726, Emperor Leo delivered speeches and sermons advocating the removal of images. When these had no effect, he ordered, early in 727, the destruction of the icon of Christ over the palace gate. There was a riot, and the official who was carrying out the emperor's instructions was done to death by furious people. The rioters were severely punished. Leo could count on the support of the army, for most of his troops came from the same eastern provinces of the empire, where a certain austerity in religious practice prevailed. A revolt which broke out in Greece, mainly on religious grounds, was crushed by the Imperial fleet in 727. In 730, Patriarch Germanos I of Constantinople resigned rather than subscribe to an iconoclastic decree. Leo had him replaced by Anastasios, who willingly sided with the emperor on the question of icons. Thus, Leo suppressed the overt opposition of the capital. The emperor died in 740. For the last 10 years of his reign there had been a steady destruction of icons and holy paintings in Constantinople, and to a lesser extent in the provinces. Anyone who tried to hinder the work of destruction was sternly punished, but no one seems to have been put to death. Leo's son and successor, Constantine V, who had already been co-emperor for 20 years, had every intention of continuing his father's policy. Constantine V furthered his views until the end of his own rule in 775. In 754, Constantine summoned the First Ecumenical Council concerned with religious imagery, the Council of Hieria, that 340 bishops attended. On behalf of the Church, the Council endorsed an iconoclast position and declared image worship to be blasphemy. The Synod of Hieria was followed by a campaign to remove images from the walls of churches and to purge the court and bureaucracy of iconodules. Since monasteries tended to be strongholds of iconophile sentiment and contributed little or nothing towards the secular needs of the state, Constantine specifically targeted these communities. He also expropriated monastic property for the benefit of the state or the army. These acts of repression against the monks were largely led by the emperor's general, Michael Lachanodrakon, who threatened resistant monks with blinding and exile. In the Hippodrome, he organized the pairing of numerous monks and nuns in forced marriage, publicly ridiculing their vows of chastity. His reign saw a consolidation of Byzantine security from external threats. As an able military leader, Constantine took advantage of civil war in the Muslim world to make limited offensives on the Arab frontier. With this eastern frontier secure, he undertook repeated campaigns against the Bulgars in the Balkans. His military activity and policy of settling Christian populations from the Arab frontier in Thrace made Byzantium's hold on its Balkan territories more secure.